Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We're all learning. We knew there would be bumps.
Vaccination vacuum. Why have fewer than half of the doses shipped to BC been administered? Also,
it makes me feel scared because I don't want to catch it.
50 cases of COVID-19 linked to 5 different classes at a Surrey high school. And
for pleasure, for leisure, for vacations.
Grounded. More fallout for Canada's high-flying politicians.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The new year brings with it more than 2,000 new cases of COVID-19 and 45 more deaths. Those 4-day totals, a grim reminder this pandemic is far from over. But we now have a clearer picture of the vaccination rollout plan for our province. Tanya Fletcher is here live with the latest on that tonight. And Tanya, BC has now received tens of thousands of doses, but not even half of them have been used. Why is that?
Well, we're told it's largely due to logistical challenges, Mike. BC has received nearly 55,000 doses in total of the vaccine. That's to date, but only 24,000 of them, fewer than half, have actually been administered. The provincial health officer described how delicate these doses are. They're not the usual fridge-stable vaccines, and so they need to be handled much more cautiously. It adds a whole nother layer of complexity. It's also taken some time, she says, to coordinate redistribution plans and to mobilize immunization clinics. So she says it is very complicated at the front end, but she expects distribution to ramp up to full capacity soon.
We have our plans a little bit more put in place about how to actually physically get doses from one place to another place within the allotted time frame, within the safety parameters for the freezers, and people to receive them on the other end and ready to immunize.
The province will be getting another 17,000 or so doses of the Pfizer vaccine in the coming days, but the next shipment of the Moderna vaccine is not expected in BC until the 3rd week of January.
So a long way to go, and health officials also gave an update on who is getting vaccinated when. Take us through those details.
So resident staff and essential visitors of long-term care homes continue to be the priority, along with frontline healthcare workers and in remote communities. Next in line, we heard today, will be seniors in the community, homeless people, and those in communal settings, including prisons, jails, mental health facilities. Dr. Bonnie Henry says BC is on par to vaccinate 150,000 British Columbians by the end of February, and contracts with Pfizer and Moderna are expected to scale up in March. That means BC is on pace to widen the criteria to pretty much everybody come April.
Contingent on supply, our plan is to begin our mass vaccination strategy based on age, and then descending in 5-year cohorts after our 80-plus priority population is completed. And we are working on how do we do that to make sure that it's accessible and fair for people around the province.
And details on that mass vaccination plan will be revealed at the end of the month. Mike?
All right, Tanya, thanks very much. And let's take a closer look at those numbers from the past 4 days. As mentioned, another 45 people in our province have died from COVID-19. Dr. Bonnie Henry says the vast majority were seniors living in long-term care and 2 First Nation elders. BC's death toll now stands at 946. BC also recorded more than 2,200 positive tests since last Thursday. Total cases now top 54,000. 351 people currently in hospital, 76 of those patients in critical or intensive care. Right now, there are just over 6,800 active cases of the virus. Just under 8,800 people are under active public health monitoring over exposure to the virus. Most elementary and high school students returned to their classrooms today, but some with heightened anxiety. 50 cases of COVID-19 are linked to 5 classrooms at Surrey's Earl Marriott Secondary. As Tina Lovegreen reports, parents are wondering if it's safe to send their children back to school after the winter break.
It's been a particularly nerve-wracking first day back for parents picking up their kids at Earl Marriott Secondary.
Yeah, I got 3 kids in here, and we've been talking about this all day, and we're kind of concerned of what's going on.
50 cases of COVID-19 have been linked to 5 classrooms at the Surrey school. The cases are from before the winter break, but a letter sent out yesterday shared the exact number of infections and said it stemmed from PE classes, where multiple classrooms were using the gym at the same time.
We knew there was cases, right? But we didn't know there was that many, right? That's what's alarming.
The Surrey School's superintendent says there were students who came to class with symptoms, but says it's making sure the school is reviewing and following safety protocols.
It's our responsibility to make sure that health and safety protocols are in place, but they aren't always followed, right? That people don't always wear masks in hallways as they are required to do.
Some parents and the local teachers union are calling for masks to be mandatory at all times.
So we think a mask mandate would be very helpful to make it safer for everyone in schools, and not just for secondary, but also for elementary.
BC's provincial health officer says while masks are an important part of safety, it's other protocols that need to be more carefully reviewed.
What procedures were being followed in that class, in that school, whether all PE classes need to be modified, how they can be done safely.
Adding to the worries is Earl Marriott's overcapacity issues. The school has 1,900 students, 400 more than capacity.
I'm happy to have my son in school, but then again, I also worry because if he could come in contact, he could get it, he could bring it home, he could pass it on to multiple other people. I really do think something has to step up with the schooling. And it's not just, oh, Marriott, that's right now this is pretty bad, yes, but there are other schools.
Parents like Davenport say they want to see more measures put in place, whether it's mandatory masks or moving to online learning. Rules put in place until things improve. Tina Lovegreen, CBC News, Vancouver.
On Vancouver Island, 2 First Nations are trying to contain the spread of COVID-19 after recording several exposures.
We're asking all of our membership to stay home. They only should be going out to get essential needs, medical needs, and the ones that need to work off the community.
On Saturday, the Snuneymuxw First Nation near Nanaimo set up checkpoints at its reserve after learning of several COVID-19 cases in the community. The checkpoints are to ensure people only travel for essential purposes during a 2-week shelter-in-place order. The First Nation has confirmed 15 active cases and says the rate of transmission in the community is rising. The First Nation says a request for expedited access to vaccinations is now with the health minister. Cowichan tribes near Duncan have also said there are confirmed cases in their community. Those members are said to be self-isolating while health officials contact trace. If the number of cases grows, the chief and council may implement additional safety measures and restrictions. A campus security guard has been charged after an altercation at Trinity Western University in Langley led to the death of a 31-year-old man. 51-year-old Jack Hutchinson is charged with manslaughter. The incident happened last September. According to police, officers responded to a report of an agitated man who was involved in an incident with campus security. The victim, Howard Glenn Hill, was found unresponsive and taken to hospital where he later died. A spokesperson for Trinity Western wouldn't confirm whether Hutchinson is still employed by the university. Well, another big storm is BC bound, and rain-weary residents are bracing for more rain yet again.
Something to endure, something you've got to get through to get to the sunny part.
I came from the interior, and I could have been shoveling it. I'd rather walking in the rain. So
I love to be outside no matter what the weather.
Environment Canada has already issued wind warnings for the Central Coast, Metro Vancouver, Vancouver Island. Winds are expected to pick up on Tuesday and will reach between 70 and 90 kilometers an hour. A rainfall warning also in effect for West Vancouver Island. And meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now, also tracking this storm, this latest storm. It's never ending.
Yeah, I was going to say another day, another storm, Mike, but I could also say another year another storm. Mother Nature just kept on keeping on right through the calendar change. This is the latest that we're waiting for in a series of storms. Right now, across Metro Vancouver, this is actually the break between storms. It is dry out there. We've actually got some breaks in the clouds. Maybe you were lucky enough to see a sliver of blue earlier today, but this is the break. So if you want to just hop out and feel what the air is like without getting soaked, now is the time. Let me take you to those warnings you mentioned. Just breaking it down for the South Coast, there is a lot going on. The system is expected to bring that rain starting around mid-morning. I'll time it out later on in the show, but just know that the strongest of the winds will be hitting exposed southern sections of Metro Vancouver. So South Surrey over towards White Rock and Richmond, that's where we'll see those 70+ km/h gusts, ramping up through the morning and staying strong through the day as we get the warm and cold front of the system. It is a rainmaker as well. Very heavy rain at times, especially for the North Shore. That's where we could see another 60+ millimeters of rain. And yeah, parts of the South Coast are going to be seeing their entire January rainfall averages in just the first week. For Vancouver, that's about 165 millimeters. And I think we're already about 60 millimeters in. So getting close in the next couple of days for parts of Metro Vancouver. I'll time out this storm because I do have some sunshine in the forecast around the corner, but this is the caboose of the storm train, so to speak. Details coming up, Mike.
We'll be happy to see the end of that. All right, Joe, thanks very much. Talk to you again in a bit. More than 1 million property owners across the Lower Mainland will get their 2021 assessments from the government over the next few days. And when they open that envelope, the numbers might come as a bit of a surprise. For the most part, owners can expect to see assessed values, rising. Single-family homes in Vancouver and Squamish saw the biggest assessment jumps at 10% each. Condos and townhouses climbed the most in the district of North Vancouver, the city of North Van, and in Maple Ridge. In the grand scheme of things, those increases aren't unheard of, but in the context of a global pandemic, they become more notable.
Throughout April and May, sales volume completely dropped off. We were looking at, I think, minus 55%, year-over-year sales volume changes, which is pretty substantial. There were a lot of questions at that point around how the residential real estate market would be impacted, but they adapted quickly. And following that, sales volume got not just back to normal, but even higher. We saw single-family dwelling prices start to creep upwards, and we saw even strata properties recover as well.
Important to note, the 2021 assessments mark property values as of July 1st, 2020. But Murrow says since then, values have risen roughly 1% per year. With the COVID-19 pandemic closing off southern options, snowbirds from across Canada are flocking to the Okanagan. An estimated 200,000 Canadians that travel to the U.S. every winter in their RVs to spend the winter in a warmer climate. With the restrictions on non-essential travel to the U.S., many of them are in BC this year. The Gallagher Lake Resort near Oliver has seen twice the number of guests this winter and had to open additional sites on the resort to accommodate the demand.
Everybody's in the same boat. They all wish they were down south. So it's just kind of nice. Of course, we don't really get to know anybody too much because of the COVID and everything. But
apart from RV parks, hotels and motels in the region are also seeing more snowbirds this year. The BC Hotel Association anticipated the trend and this year developed a pilot project to match up snowbirds with its members, as well as provide information about provincial COVID regulations and education on travel destinations in BC. Well, Team Canada playing for a World Junior Championship has become all but an expectation, but that doesn't make it any less sweet when they fight their way into the finals, and tonight was no exception.
Newhook to Schneider, in as far as wants to stick again, and he scores!
Team Canada will be playing for yet another gold medal after its dominant win today over Team Russia in the semifinals. And this year's tournament has been even more special than usual. This Canadian team has not spent a single second trailing an opponent. They've never been behind on the scoreboard. We'll see if Team Canada can bring it all home tomorrow night at 6:30. And fans are getting their first preseason look at the 2021 Vancouver Canucks, the team kicking off Training camp this morning after the province announced yesterday it would be playing home games at Rogers Arena this season. The team is preparing to build on the surprise success of last season when they knocked the defending Stanley Cup champions out of the playoffs. But as John Hernandez tells us tonight, for all those excited to see the Canucks return to home ice, there are also those who question whether it's the right decision or the safe one.
The Vancouver Canucks have won either 3-1 or 2-1.
It was a playoff run like no other. The games confined to this Edmonton bubble.
Scores! Brock Besser!
And as the clock counts down to the regular season, the Vancouver Canucks are now preparing to play on home ice for the first time in 10 months.
And it's our understanding that we have permission to play games at Rogers Arena this year.
Approval confirmed today by Premier John Horgan on social media. The move comes after prolonged talks between the NHL and provincial health officials.
We believe that those plans meet the safety protocols in terms of a public health risk.
Safety measures that include extensive COVID-19 testing and strict bubbles for traveling teams. Still concerns from some Vancouverites.
They shouldn't be bringing people from other parts of Canada with higher numbers of COVID to Vancouver.
Support from others.
Yeah, it should be good to go. They can do it in the NBA, they can do it in the NHL.
I think it benefits outweigh the cons, I guess.
You know, it's a plan that should have been approved earlier, in my opinion.
This hockey business expert says approvals from both Victoria and Ottawa should be enough to alleviate concerns.
These are professionals, players that are constantly kept track of by professional medical personnel. And I think the added risk that they bring to the table when you look at British Columbia or Vancouver as a whole is minimal.
Fans won't be allowed in the building, at least for now. Season ticket holders like Tej Dhaliwal hope that could change if the curve bends.
Even if they're a couple hundred, as long as they can abide by the safety rules and regulations, just a little bit of noise in the arena might be nice for the players and also on TV to hear it.
But there's one thing more important than a crowd, and that's a win. Home ice advantage is an added boost.
Nothing beats being at home, you know. It's home sweet home for a reason. I do think it'll translate on the ice with the result as well.
It's going to make it 4-0.
The Canucks start their season on the road on January 13th. The puck drops at Rogers Arena 1 week later. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
And Canucks players had the chance to respond to the safety concerns today. Here's what the team captain had to say.
I don't want to be the one to get it and bring it back to my family. And I don't want to be the one, giving it to other people as well. And, that's just something that you have to keep in the back of your mind. Be safe, follow the proper protocols, wear a mask, hygiene, all that kind of stuff, is going to be important for a long time.
January 20th, first home game against Montreal at Rogers Arena. Just a quick reminder, you can also watch this newscast live on CBC Gem. CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Well, a case of post-holiday regret. Politicians from coast to coast now resigning after taking vacations abroad. Why Alberta's premier is facing some especially tough questions next. And thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream tonight. Well, one woman is bringing a taste of the Caribbean to PEI. Raquel Smith is from the Bahamas and studies dance at Holland College. She's since founded her own dance studio in Charlottetown, PEI's only Black-owned dance company, according to the Black Cultural Society. Have a look.
I've been dancing since the age of 4, back at home in the islands of New Providence, that's in the Bahamas. My style of dance, I like to think of it as a fusion, ballet, jazz, funk, a little bit of hip hop, and mainly a lot of African steps I love to infuse with my movement. So whenever I'm performing, it's just me giving my all, my 100%, because I want people to really feel my energy on stage and my presence, and to know that this isn't just something that I do for a hobby, but it's something that I love. I want PEI to really just soak up my Caribbean style, just bringing something new to the island. Yeah, that's my main goal, just to be able to bring my home back to PEI. I noticed that a lot of people are very thrown by it because of how different it is, especially how I feel in PEI. The styles that you would normally come across in a dance school is normally just contemporary jazz and ballet. I feel like it has gotten a lot of attention, and the good type of attention too.
I would describe Raquel as a teacher as dedication. She's very dedicated to what she does. She's determined when she has a goal, she strives to complete it and go above and beyond. Me and one of my closest friends found out about Holland College in PEI. We found out that they had a dance program and we were really thrilled about it. And we decided to, take our chances coming to Canada. We enrolled 2017. That's how I ended up on Prince Edward Island, Charlottetown. As women, I want us to be able to be proud of who we are, no matter what shape or color, what size, anything. And for us to be just to discover, our inner beauty and be able to express that. In the long-term goals, I really hope to be able to put Oceans on tour with my beautiful dancers, and that we can be able to travel within PEI and really just show them, this is what Charlottetown has to offer. These are the dancers here. We're present, we're alive, we're creative, and we're ready to perform.
All right, back in just a second with more COVID-19 news from across the country, including the growing list of politicians resigning for traveling abroad during the pandemic. Stay right here. A growing number of politicians across Canada are coming under fire for traveling outside the country during the pandemic. That now includes federal MPs and a senator who ignored the government's own health advisories. The CBC's Hannah Thibodeau has the details on the travel and the fallout.
But this year, the pandemic has forced us to change some of those traditions, since we cannot travel and gather as we normally would.
But some federal politicians still decided to jet out of the country for the holidays, including that senator, the leader of the opposition in the Senate, Don Plett. A statement released from his office says Senator Plett traveled to Mexico on December 28th. Upon arrival, he reflected on his decision to travel and immediately made arrangements to return home on December 31st. Two Liberal MPs also traveled. Brampton West MP Kamal Khera flew to Seattle on December 23rd to attend a small memorial service for her father and uncle who died earlier in the year. In a social media post, she says although her travel was deemed essential, she's decided to step aside as the parliamentary secretary to the Minister of International Development. Montreal MP Samir Zuberi visited his wife's sick relative in Delaware from December 18th to the 31st. On Twitter, Zuberi says it was an error in judgment and is stepping away from his committee roles. Conservative MP David Sweet traveled to the United States for a property issue, but then Sweet decided to stay in the U.S. for leisure without informing the party whip. Leader Aaron O'Toole has now accepted his resignation as a committee chair. And since March, Conservative MP Ron Liepert has traveled twice to Palm Desert, California. His office called the travel essential house maintenance. And NDP MP Nikki Ashton was stripped of her critic roles for traveling to Greece to visit her sick grandmother.
Of course, there are essential reasons, like if a family member is sick. Certainly, if one of my parents was sick, I would really want to travel to see them. But aside from that, there's not really other reasons to travel, for very few other reasons, and we should remember that.
Many feel this undermines trust in politicians.
Many people believe that there is one rule for ordinary people and one rule for the elite, including elected officials.
All this at a time when Canadians have been repeatedly asked to limit all non-essential travel, both outside and inside the country. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Ottawa.
At the provincial level, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe has accepted the resignation of his highways minister who traveled to California over the holidays. That comes as several members of the Alberta legislature were demoted over what Premier Jason Kenney says was extremely poor judgment. All traveled outside Canada over the holidays. Tracy Allard, who had been the province's Minister of Municipal Affairs, and Jamie Huckabee, who was Kenney's Chief of Staff, both submitted their resignations. 5 other members of the United Conservative Party have been demoted over their travel. To Ontario now, and the crisis in that province's long-term care homes has never been so widespread. As Chris Glover explains tonight, 219 homes now have outbreaks, a record number fighting the virus.
My grandma was crying in the phone, telling me that my grandma said, "They didn't give me water."
Just after Christmas, 96-year-old COVID patient Ping Chu was transferred to hospital from Tender Care Living Center in Scarborough. Yesterday, she died.
I just, I know she's now in the arms of God and she has no more pain and disease. But she was such a lively person just before the outbreak.
More than 60 residents there have died of COVID, and North York General Hospital has taken over temporary control. Chu's grandson is joining families accusing the home's operator of failing to have enough staff to protect residents.
I think the first wave that they went okay kind of gave us full sense of security.
Now a record number of long-term care homes are in crisis. Today, 219 are in outbreak, 12 more than yesterday.
A humanitarian crisis.
Today, the Federal Green Party chairing a virtual meeting to call for immediate action.
By getting a swab before you go in and out is very effective, and we only have a few small pilots. It's unconscionable.
Ontario's Minister of Long-Term Care says enhanced COVID testing is catching infections sooner and pledged more money for staffing. At Toronto's St. George Care Community, dealing with the biggest number of active cases in an Ontario nursing home, finally some relief. Vaccines were given to residents there on New Year's Day.
We need a sense of urgency and we need a sense of emergency here.
Geriatrician Dr. Nathan Stahl demands a faster vaccine rollout inside nursing homes and enhanced restrictions outside.
The greatest risk factor for whether a long-term care home is going to experience an outbreak is the incidence of COVID-19 in the community surrounding the home. And we've never seen higher levels of community transmission.
As the military supported some homes in the spring,
it's almost too late for many of them.
Reid Zhao says while it's too late for his own grandmother, he wants the troops back.
All we need to do is ask why we haven't asked.
And here at St. George Care Community in the Annex, this is the largest active outbreak at a long-term care home in Ontario. But the good news is the home's operator tells me that the situation here is improving. There have been no new cases of residents contracting COVID-19 in the past 5 days. But still today, University Health Network has signed a voluntary agreement to take over control of this facility while it is dealing with this massive outbreak. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
It is now after midnight in the UK, and England is now into a new national lockdown. This after a sharp rise in COVID-19 cases brought on by the new variant.
With most of the country already under extreme measures, it's clear that we need to do more together to bring this new variant under control while our vaccines are rolled out.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson has ordered schools and colleges to close their doors and move to online learning until mid-February. He once again ordered people to stay home and only to leave for absolutely essential reasons permitted by law. Hospitals in England are under increasing pressure from the mutated virus, which is believed to be between 50 to 70% more infectious. New cases set a record in the UK today, topping more than 58,000. And an important election in Georgia tomorrow will decide who controls the U.S. Senate. But what Americans are talking about today is that phone call where Donald Trump pressured Georgian officials to find votes for him in November's presidential election. Katie Simpson has the fallout from Washington.
Alarming his opponents while frustrating his allies, the president's brazen attempt to hold on to power is triggering backlash from all sides.
An American president sitting in the Oval Office, working the phones to subvert American democracy for his personal benefit. Let that sink in for a minute.
This call was not a helpful call.
I just think it's inappropriate. It's the wrong thing to do, and it's something that the president shouldn't be doing.
In that hour-long phone call on Saturday, Donald Trump pressured and threatened Georgia's elections officials to overturn the results of the November vote, citing conspiracy theories about widespread voter fraud to make his case.
All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have.
Those officials, who are Republican, recorded the call as an insurance policy of sorts.
I think given the environment we're in right now and political situation that we're in and the history of the president, knowing that he sometimes doesn't necessarily characterize things as they might have actually occurred.
The man who oversees Georgia's elections used the spotlight to meticulously debunk the false information the president continues to peddle, especially after what he heard on that call.
I wanted to scream. Well, I did scream at the computer, and I screamed in my car.
Republicans fear the infighting is undermining public confidence in the election system at a crucial time. Voters in Georgia are about to determine which party will control the U.S. Senate in a pair of close runoff elections tomorrow.
My sole focus is on getting Georgians out to vote on January 5th because we are the firewall to stopping socialism.
For the Republican candidates, Trump's call is another unwanted distraction, forcing them off message, presenting a fresh opportunity for Democrats.
I don't know why he still wants the job. He doesn't want to do the work.
The international vaccine rollout is well underway, but as expected, it's going to be a slow one. So why is Israel so far ahead of other countries? That's next.
Finally tonight, there are many fine art galleries in cities and towns all over Canada, but only one town that is an art gallery. Dan Bjarnason visited Chemainus, BC, a lumber town on Vancouver Island that's rapidly becoming one big painting.
With its main industry, the local sawmill, shutting down, it seemed a good bet that soon all of Chemainus's tomorrows would be littered with boarded-up homes and grass in the streets. How to stop the rot? Amid all this scenic wonder, Chemainus decided what it really needed was something pretty to look at, like a mural or two. Well, one thing led to another, and now you can't escape them. So far, 16 murals scattered about town, all done by BC artists, all depict local history. It seems to have done the trick. 5 years ago, Chemainus was about to be mothballed. Not now.
We've rebuilt this town. And now we have a little town that perhaps 4 and 5 years ago may have seen 5 or 10 visitors a year. We have a little town here today that's seen over 100,000 just this past year.
You can even find tourists here at this time of year despite the weather.
Besides the murals and everything else, it's beautiful weather out here. I mean, look at it.
For anyone who's keeping track, Chemainus is supposed to be the country's biggest outdoor gallery. And it does go on. Murals cover every major building in town. Who can tell the liquor store from the mounting station? This bootstrap renaissance and spruce up has spawned new industries, 30 in 4 years, and created a new audience for local artists, an audience beyond family and friends.
It's a great place to show in Chemainus now, show the work. It's giving people art that they're not used to seeing. It's everybody's art gallery.
This mural blitz was the brainstorm of Karl Schutz, who picked it up from monks in Romania. It's worked.
What was it like here before in terms of tourists?
In terms of tourists, that was a strange word because tourists, they didn't come to Chemainus, and if somebody came down here, they surely were lost.
Well, they're not lost now. Chemainiacs are gearing up for the next season. The 17th mural will go here near the outdoor washrooms. Ideas are welcome, but no winter themes, please. Dan Bjarnason, CBC News, Chemainus, BC.
And that's the National for Saturday, January the 4th. Join us tomorrow night for CBC News Sunday Report. For CBC News, I'm George McLean. Good night.
I'll look at some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
It's complex at the front end, but once we get that into place, I expect it to go an awful lot more smoothly.
More than 24,000 people in BC have now received their first shot of the COVID-19 vaccination as of January 3rd. 55,000 doses have been shipped to BC. The province is aiming to provide vaccines to 3,300 people a day for the next 2 weeks as it ramps up immunizations. BC is hoping to provide at least one dose to 400,000 people by March. And health officials also announcing 2,211 new cases of COVID-19 and 45 more deaths in our province over the last 4 days. Dr. Bonnie Henry says most of those deaths were in long-term care, and that included 2 First Nation elders. The number of active cases is now at its lowest since mid-November, sitting at just over 6,800.
The fact is, the concerning is that we didn't know there was 50 cases. We knew there was cases, right? But we didn't know there was that many.
And today marked a return to school after the holiday break, but for many students at a Surrey high school, the return also marked an end to 2 weeks of isolation. Nearly 50 cases of COVID-19 were linked to 5 classes at Earl Marriott Secondary, and that has parents and students there worried. Some 40,000 have signed a petition to move to online learning. And Canada has now surpassed 600,000 confirmed cases, and the virus is still picking up speed. Vaccines could, of course, help, but public health experts and leaders themselves acknowledge it's all happening too slowly. But Briar Stewart shows us speeding up vaccinations is a bit of a New Year's resolution for officials across the country.
Anita, how are you? Good to see you.
After facing criticism around a slow rollout, Ontario officials say it's now full steam ahead.
We're ramping it up, and you're going to see a significant difference over the next few weeks there.
Some working on the front lines have called it maddening that tens of thousands of doses are sitting in freezers when long-term care home residents are dying from COVID-19.
We have people who've raised their hand and said, we will do this 24/7, engage us please, and we're waiting for our instructions. We're ready to go. We just don't know what's causing the delays.
Across the country, provinces vow to pick up the pace. In Manitoba, healthcare workers lined up at a convention center turned mass vaccination site. The province hopes to administer 10,000 vaccines a week by the end of the month.
I'm very excited. I'm hopeful more of the population can get access to the vaccine so that maybe there is an end in sight to this.
In British Columbia, the hope is to have 150,000 people vaccinated by the end of February.
It's a monumental task, and there are many months left to go in this.
Like elsewhere, healthcare workers, long-term care residents, and remote First Nations are the priority here. Last week, dozens were vaccinated on the Gitgat First Nation, which is a northern community on BC's coast.
The fact that we've been able to have access to the vaccine, been able to give it to the majority of people eligible, it creates a bit of a sense of relief, feel a little bit safer.
But for some Canadians who have received the vaccine, there's still uncertainty around the timeline for the next round. Quebec is delaying giving some their second shot in order to give more people at least one dose now. It's disappointing for some families.
I was so hopeful and so excited about being able to hug my dad. And now that there's a delay in the delivery of the vaccine, I can't say that.
CBC's Briar Stewart reporting tonight. Well, it's been almost a month since the first vaccine was approved for use in Canada, but as we've mentioned, actually getting the vaccines to people is a slow process. By January, the countries that have vaccines, the world average was 0.17 shots per 100 people. Canada fared a little better, 0.31, not as good as the United States. Certainly not as good as the global leader, Israel, which has already vaccinated 14 people out of every 100. The National's Adrian Arsenault looks at how they're doing that.
The country is small. Well, that helps with getting shots in arms. But Palestinians in Gaza and the occupied West Bank still don't have access to the vaccine. That is a worry. When it comes to Israeli citizens, though, they are being vaccinated faster than anyone else in the world. There are drive-through vaccinations. Some clinics run 24/7. There are enough ideas at work to intrigue Canadian Dr. Tara Kieran, a leader in medical innovation.
Paramedics are one of the groups that they have co-opted to help them to deliver the vaccine. I think in Canada, there's been, this focus really on relying on our nurses who are already very stretched due to COVID-19. And I think that taking an all hands on deck approach is really important.
Digitized medical records in Israel mean notifications of appointments are online or by text. Canada is not ready for that.
When I went to get a flu vaccine at the pharmacy, I actually have no idea how my family doctor found out, or if she ever found out that I did. What happens in this country?
Unfortunately, much of healthcare still runs on faxes. It is still done via fax, believe it or not.
The Israeli government approach is strong, but vaccine hesitancy is still stubborn, a phenomenon approached differently around the world. So in Spain, people can refuse vaccines, but a registry of refusals will be shared with the EU. The consequences of that aren't yet clear.
L'Italia rinasce come un fiore.
Italy's idea is to make a vaccination more like an event, planning beautiful pavilions for vaccine distribution, all marked with a primrose, the first flower of spring.
I love that approach of connecting this idea of getting immunized to doing something good for yourself and the world, to rebirth, if you will, to spring.
Physician Noah Ivers is with a Canadian coalition called 19-0, aiming to curate the best ideas to counter COVID and vaccine hesitancy.
The research shows that two things can be most effective at addressing vaccine hesitancy. Number one is advice from a trusted religious organization or leader. And number two is advice from a trusted healthcare professional.
I say thank you, I say a blessing to God.
To see rabbis vaccinated and imams encouraging it helps.
From Islamic law standpoint, it is absolutely fine and permissible to take medicine to prevent a disease.
Persuasion matters, Ivers says, but broadly, this all has to be about speed.
Maybe folks need a ride to the clinic. I think we can steal a lot from successful Get the Vote Out campaigns in that regard. We need to collate the lists of folks willing to work off hours, middle of the night.
The plea from health workers is if Canada wants to do better, it needs to approach vaccinating people like a disaster deployment, because sadly, that's what it is.
Well, bears being killed by trains has been a problem plaguing Alberta's national parks for many years. Now, a new pilot project is changing things for the better. That's coming up. And at 6:42, there's a live shot from Whistler Village tonight. Some folks out for a Monday night skate there. For us on the coast, the relentless rain finally let up this afternoon, but it's coming back big time. What we can expect and when with Johanna next.
They put a smile on my face every time I spend time with them. This one is Stumpy, and this is Kevin. He's my favorite. So, like, aside from me, they view me as the dominant of the herd, but Kevin is the actual dominant goat out of them. Well, this idea started on a camping trip with my dad. He's 60 years old and carrying a 50-pound pack. I noticed that, like, if I want to keep doing this with my dad, I'm gonna have to figure out a different solution. And I looked at horses and donkeys and mules, and when I found some videos of goats, I was like, well, this is cool. So we decided to get goats. All my friends and family thought I was a little nuts because they're like, are you really gonna do this? And I'm like, of course I am. Now we can't stop talking about camping and going on adventures with goats. For training, they can't carry any weight right now. So there's just balloons inside the packs to give them some width so they get used to carrying the packs. They're not full grown. They can't pack, a full pack until they're 3. At 3, they can carry 30% of their body weight. We're hoping that they grow to be about 220 pounds, which gets us to somewhere in and around 60 pounds a goat for carrying capacity. They're just like humans. We need to walk and work up to a distance. We can't just go out there and hike 20K if you haven't hiked 20K or worked your way up to that. You see how they climb anything and walk over anything. We bring them back here to train them on the logs. They can be slippery, they can have moss. They can be wet over top of a creek. They can handle steep mountain terrain just like a mountain goat, just like a mountain sheep. Incredible animals for following you. Everything we ask them to do, they do. Everywhere we go, they go. They'll pack for 12 years. Some guys are still packing 12, 13, 14-year-old goats. So the longevity of it is good as well. I have to make sure that especially this one doesn't walk in front of me so that they follow me wherever I go and not him, so that they don't just take off somewhere. And that's very important so that they stick with you. We'll be taking them to Crown Land in the foothills. That's why we want the goats, because they haul in some of that gear that's required to spend a night in the backcountry where you don't have any facilities. We're part of the North American Pack Goat Association, and there are some specific practices that we talk about, and one of them is getting off the trail and leaving room for others. We're giving them a job to do, and we're giving them a purpose. This is something that they're perfectly capable of doing. It's not taking advantage of the animal and using it for our own purposes. It's giving them something that will make them happy, and it'll also make us happy at the same time.
The Market Report is brought to you by Fortis BC. We've got even bigger rebates. Rebate? Whoa! On select high-efficiency equipment for business, but only for a limited time.
Well, a species of fish you've likely never heard about is making a major comeback from being endangered. But now BC fishermen can't avoid catching it, and that's threatening their ability to earn a living. After stocks of Boccaccio rockfish rapidly declined, Fisheries and Oceans Canada worked with fishermen and environmentalists to try to protect it. Then in 2016, there was a massive birthing event which appears to have created an off-the-charts number of Boccaccio all along the BC coast. But their growing numbers are creating a new challenge. The strict limits on how many you can catch sometimes comes with a stiff penalty. Once you catch the weight limit, you can no longer fish for any type of species. The Canadian Groundfish Research and Conservation Society says some skippers are afraid to go out, thinking they will hit their limit and not be able to fish for the rest of the year. Fisheries and Oceans Canada has raised the amount of bycatch allowed to temper effects on the industry. Stakeholders hope more surveys of the fish will be done to try to figure out how many are actually out there, so more adjustments can be made. Apparently these guys can live like 100 years. Never heard of them before.
Neither had I. No, I was learning every sentence of the way. Yeah, they're heavy, old fish.
Exactly. And now there appears to be a lot of them, so there you go.
Yeah, it's good news.
Yeah. All right,
I do not have
here
good
we
news.
are. Here we are on a Monday night, and we're waiting for the next one.
Yes, it is that kind of start to 2021. Let this not be an omen. I wish that I had rockfish good news here, but this is definitely more of a more wet and windy weather on the way, as I mentioned earlier. I want to take you to the radar right now. We've got rain, lingering showers across the south coast. If you're in the valley right now, getting a bit of a downpour, but clearing for the next few hours. In fact, it's too bad that somebody on Twitter said we couldn't alter the rotation of the Earth and get this dry break that's happening overnight during daytime hours. But alas, we will be dry overnight, and here is the next system. It's a pretty powerful low, the last, as I mentioned earlier, in that train. Just expanding the bigger picture, we focused on the warnings in place for Metro Vancouver earlier in the show, but look at wind warnings for the island, the Sunshine Coast, all the way up through northern coastal sections. Whistler under a snowfall warning for 15 to 20 centimeters more, and then the Rockies also getting a lot of fresh snow. So there's our exiting low pressure system, and then an approaching storm. So we actually get the warm front and then the cold front, which is why it's a long duration event starting mid-morning tomorrow and lasting through Tuesday before we get a bit of a break. And yes, we will get a bit of a break coming up for air midweek. Just looking at that timing again, so fairly quiet overnight. It's around 10, 11 a.m. That I think we'll see the steady rain move in. So here we go, 7, 8, 9 a.m. Tuesday. That's when that rain really begins to fall. Snow levels will be dropping through the day as we get into the cold front, and some pretty good gusts in there as well for exposed sections of the city. We do have some BC ferry cancellations already showing up. The Duke Point to Tsawwassen ferry sailings have already been canceled for tomorrow, so you want to check the latest, but that is because of the forecast big winds through the day. A nice clear out Wednesday afternoon, and look at that. I got us some sunshine for Thursday. Bit of a question mark for Friday into Saturday, so I'll keep you posted. That is Mother Nature. From Mother Nature to, how about some Canadian nature, a 5-year pilot project in Banff National Park to reduce the mortality rates of some animals is showing some good progress.
Yes, it is. As Dave Gilson explains tonight, it's all part of a joint initiative looking at wildlife deaths on railway tracks in Banff and Yoho National Parks.
West of the Banff town site, the rail line cuts and curves through thick forests, steep hills, and for the past few years, a Parks Canada study area where researchers are looking at ways to reduce wildlife deaths along the tracks.
So you can see how thick the brush is around us, and so it took quite a bit of effort to cut these trails into the landscape, but they have proved to be efficient ways for wildlife to get off of the rail and then travel safely in other places.
Parks Canada has cut and cleared several trails leading off the tracks and others that run parallel to the rail line. The idea is to provide wildlife with potential escape routes from trains and a network of alternative pathways through the area.
You have to recognize that they will select to use the rail at times, and so what we are trying to do here is reduce the probability that they'll get struck. So giving them options off of the rail to travel outside of the rail corridor, and as well as giving them a higher success rate of leaving the rail under duress.
2 years into the 5-year study, park staff say they've created roughly 38 kilometers of trail along a section of track in the park. They add the area includes rough terrain and other features that mean fewer route options for animals. Researchers are using several trail cameras to monitor wildlife behavior and trail use. Some images so far show a variety of animals using the parallel paths in the area. Cameras have also caught images of other animals jumping off tracks and using those cut trails to escape passing trains. Parks officials say early results are showing some promise.
Our sample sizes aren't large enough yet to get significant results, but the initial results are showing that wildlife are using the parallel trails. Once we clear them out, we're starting to see quite a bit of additional wildlife use there. And additionally, these egress routes, we're seeing camera images showing wildlife coming off the railway, sometimes under duress, leaving the railway track. So that's encouraging to see those.
Park says the strategy has minimal impact on rail operations, is relatively low maintenance, and could eventually be replicated along other sections of the railway if it works. Dave Gilson, CBC News, Banff National Park.
He may be known for his skills on the tree-lined mountains of Quebec, but this Olympic snowboarder took his skills to an urban setting. More tricks from La Belle Province next.
Welcome to Little Canada.
You'll first clear customs before entering this tiny world where cars, bridges, people, even skyscrapers are shrunken down to a 1:87 ratio. First stop, Little Niagara.
It's under construction. The first thing you'll see is actually what you'll hear is the roar of Niagara, of our little American Falls and our little Horseshoe Falls.
Then you can head to Niagara-on-the-Lake and visit a winery before checking out a local restaurant for dinner.
Little Canada has a little day, 15 minutes. And every 15 minutes, the sun goes down. All the lights on the cars, on the buildings, the street lights, they all come on, just like they do in big Canada.
Next stop, Little Toronto, which is still being built, but eventually there'll be
Of all the landmarks that you might expect to see in the cities, of course the CN Tower.
and the Rogers Centre with a retractable roof and working jumbotron.
Of course, it reveals a game going on inside. The Blue Jays are winning. It's funny, our sports teams win all the time in Little Canada.
The brains behind it all immigrated here about 20 years ago and fell in love with the country.
It's such a vast country, and I hope that this is a way of introducing other parts of the country to those who do not have the opportunity.
It might be little, but the numbers are big. In Little Canada, you'll find more than 10,000 little citizens, 300 autonomous cars. Toronto's skyline has more than 30,000 LED lights, and Little Parliament Hill took more than 3,000 hours to build with 20,000 hand-painted bricks. The makers are still busy putting together all those little details. Eventually, every region in the country will be shrunken down from the East Coast to the Rockies, and of course, the North.
When you walk through the doors, you'll be hit with a blast of cool air.
From forest and lakes to suburbs and skyscrapers, celebrating our home and native land is big in Little Canada. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
We have a project called Be Kind Winnipeg, and Be Kind Winnipeg is just to kind of share stories of kindness that are happening in our city. And it just kind of started with our boys wanting to give sandwiches to people who were actually homeless on the street.
When I first started this project, I was happy.
We want to hear small acts of kindness. It doesn't have to be big. I think sometimes we think that we have to do big kind acts, but really a smile from someone on the street, or a hello, or a card you dropped off to your neighbor, it just spreads so much joy and love.
Favorite story? Well, it's from a doctor that we gave notes to a hospital. And saying that they did a good job on exactly a job that's frustrating because of COVID.
I think we just want to continue this trend of being Winnipeg strong and showing kindness to others. So that's really our hope for this entire project.
Well, the Winter Olympics are now just over a year away, and snowboarding champ Sébastien Toutant is turning his focus to defending his gold medal.
Yeah, but for the last year, he's also been busy with the creative side of the sport. As Douglas Gallivant shows us tonight, Toutant and his crew perform death-defying tricks around Montreal as part of a short film.
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna look at that. Oh, that's not good.
Some films need a do not try this at home disclaimer. Seb Toot's latest project is not one of those. It's pretty clear how risky the stunts are straight from the start.
I feel like it just shows that we're all human, you know? And it's like we take some hard crash and then we go back up and we try again until we get it.
The film is called Short Notice and was mostly shot in Quebec last winter. In it, Toutant and a crew of 7 other snowboarders transfer the talents they learned on the mountain to the city. Filming it wasn't easy. Each setup took hours of work to execute, and sometimes they were interrupted.
When police showed up, like, of course, they see that we're professional and we're not there to break stuff up. But, you know, it happens sometimes that you put like a ton of hours on the work and you're not even able to film because they tell us to leave.
There are 2 women featured in the film, and that's something Toutant says is important because it breaks the impression that only men are up for extreme urban snowboarding.
Girls are killing it as well, and they're part of the progression of riding. There's less girls filming in the street, I would say, that are competing, but it just showed that it's possible and there's a side to it.
For Touton, doing projects like this film is a welcome change from the world of competing for medals.
Nothing is perfect out in the street. It's not meant for snowboarding. And it's like when you're able to land the tricks that you picture in your head, the feeling of it, all the hard work that go through to get one shot, when you get it, it feels like so good. It feels like kind of like winning a contest.
Now that Touton has scratched his creative itch, he's back to focusing on preparing to defend his Olympic gold medal. He says he'll keep doing films on the side, but he'll dial back the risk for the next year so he doesn't jeopardize his health ahead of Beijing 2022. Douglas Gellivan, CBC News, Montreal.
I don't know, Joe, I think you could probably handle some of those rail moves, you know, sliding
Yeah,
down the
I
rail.
was going to say, when you picture me snowboarding, just picture that.
Okay, we'll keep that in our memories. That's good.
Yeah, he's pretty cool though. I now follow Seb Toots on
Toot,
Instagram.
yes.
Yeah, and that's my goal.
Very good. Very good. I'll make it my goal too. Before we go, just a reminder, you can always watch our newscasts online, cbc.ca/BC. Our next local news right here at 11 with Isabel Regam after the National. Leave you tonight with some out-of-towners who flew in for a visit. As you can see, they're actually birds, the snow geese in Steveston. Have a great night.
Good night.